We treat aversive control and positive reinforcement as if like they're just two sides of the same coin, and you can't, if you don't use this, you do the other. And that's utter nonsense. Like in the whole animal kingdom and biology or nature, there is no replacement for one or the other. They both have their own evolved systems and serve a certain function. Ultimately, it comes down to survival of the fittest, or the one who can reproduce the best and seek pleasure and avoid discomfort. There is no flip-flopping back and forth. And you can get to a certain extent with one or the other as like a primary training method, if you will. But don't underestimate the fallout something will have if you think you can completely replace one with the other.
All right, everybody, welcome to Training Without Conflict podcast number 70. My guest doesn't need really any introduction. She's been for quite some time now trying to explain and trying to give different take on science. So Melanie Uhde, thank you for coming to the podcast. We did one, I don't know, was it last year or what? Since then, a lot has happened since then. And for whatever reason, it seems like we just have to keep continuing to educate and defend our position. And it doesn't matter what we do. There is always some weird twist that the people that don't like it will just put. So I don't have really any agenda besides, I know we're going to talk about studies because we both are kind of obsessed with those things, and I'm sure we both are also very frustrated of how studies get interpreted and, you know, what gets picked out and what purposefully gets buried away. I do want to talk a little bit about, well, not a little bit. I feel like I really want to go over some of the, like Clive study for sure, the one that I helped organize. And guess what? I have some videos and some still shots that I'm gonna play for you. I don't know. We'll see if I will play those for just the bigger audience, but that will be cool. And yeah, what you've been up to? You have now the young dog, and it seems like training is going really good.
It is going well. It's certainly a challenge. It's like my own dog, my second Malinois, and one that has now the potential to compete in monitoring. So I'm going through the program, the training, which I couldn't do with my first for various reasons. So now there's a very steep learning curve, and it's very fascinating, and in many ways almost like my own little case study and field study of all the things that we talk about, right?
It's the real laboratory, like seriously.
Yeah. And you know, it's not that there's anything in terms of the surprise, but it kind of just, you know, for me in particular also, the way I entered this field was from like I came in thinking a lot about the science behind all these things, because early on when I started my first dog training and then a little bit into pet dog training, I wasn't very skilled yet, but my brain works like, why am I doing these things, right? For a lot of other trainers, they come in like just collecting a lot of years of experience and then eventually starting to look into the science and asking, okay, the trainers that we support in that way, that ask, how can I do better? So I'm coming like from the other direction. And for me, it became really clear that, you know, you can talk about the science all day, but you gotta have the experience that basically is rooted in and seeing what's happening, and science helps, giving you the nudge and giving you some nuance there, but it's still like feeling it yourself and seeing it is basically what completes the story. And that part itself, like, I question a lot people who have very big words, whether or not they have seen the things that they're talking about. Because like I talk to Michael Ellis all the time since I'm now living here. It's like, yeah, I knew this is gonna happen, or I understand why he's reacting that way. But now I'm actually also have to problem solve it and see it in the moment is not a totally different story, but it's certainly adding a lot of color to the whole idea of training dogs for sure.
Which part do you like more, the actual training the dog, or the whole Monduring game, as far as like the mental challenges of how to train different things, or like which one do you enjoy better?
That's a good question. I think for me, I haven't been like in this sport world for very long. So I
Right.
think I haven't been infected with like the competitive nature of, training a dog that can compete in all these tasks. But what kind of gets me a lot is the parallels to what we maybe not on the same level, but the parallels what we expect dogs to do in this society and how to train them to perform even in real life. So the aspect of generalization, for example,
Yes.
right? I don't want
Yes.
you to do this on that training field. I want you to do that when I'm telling you these things, no matter where we are. Or the aspect of sometimes you also have to, because and it's rooted in because trust me, I'm telling you, you have to and you'll be fine. And that all of that thing is like what I think, just like what a lot of nowadays in society, normal dogs, whether you compete or not, experience all the time, and the conflict that comes from that if owners or trainers don't know how to deal with that, or the arousal level, like the whole thing about wanting to have the motivated dog with high arousal and yet stay functional and responsive to you without suppression, because everyone
Right.
thinks you're
Exactly.
just cranking them up and suppressing them. No, that's not the case, really. So there's
Finding the
something
way to control the behavior, but to create the cooperation, not the suppression, as you're saying.
right.
And what is the cool thing about sports, especially in particularly protection sports, is that you have your own dog, and you can have him from a little puppy. And as things go on, as maturity kicks in, different challenges arise, and you can experiment in so many ways, like, well, how can I make him let go? How can I convince him to come back? How can I? So with one dog, and that's your dog, and there is no time limit, literally, and you get to experience what can work with him or her and what cannot, and then put it back into scientific ways and explain clearly why it works and why it doesn't, um, and it's very interesting. I love I not that I don't like any other dog sports. I mean, I personally have done agility early on in the 90s. I mean, it was kind of by accident because, I was living kind of where you are now in the Bay Area. And there was, at the time, really big community down south towards San Jose agility. I can't even remember their names, but they were like world renowned at the time. And they would come to like doing protection training with me with their border collies, and almost kind of, hush hush kind of, but they were smart enough because they wanted to add a little fun, a little more adrenaline, a little more even confrontation, if you want, to where the dog can come out on the better end of things. And yeah, they kind of got me into it. Eventually, I they would come and I would give bites, and the dogs have fun. Then I would go to their club, and I remember still the first time they gave me I mean, it was a world team dog, and they gave me the map of the run, what I need to do. And the dog was losing his mind because he had to go over the catwalk or teeter-totter or whatever and wait for me there and spin and bark and just be so frustrated that I am not giving him what's the next thing to do, you know? And it really makes you feel like, it's on me now, you know? I mean, clearly it's on me. However, where I was going with this is the comparison between protection and agility and dog diving and flyball and anything else really is that, and I want to mention this because it always comes into conversation, you know, when we compare a very successful agility trainer with very successful IGP or Mondial trainer or whatever protection sport. And I don't want to take away, because again, this is a highly skilled and I mean, today compared to the early 90s is on a very different level, just like any other sport. But in this sport, you're dealing with, you know, high arousal, extreme excitement that can lead to frustration. In protection sports, you have kind of two paths. You can present it as, okay, well, this is really, we're going to start with the mindset that this is a game and it's very ritualistic and you don't really get to dominate or be somewhat, you know, show any kind of aggression or even tap into that part of your brain. And then there is the other part of trainers that really do the protection sports the way they're designed to be and find a way how to navigate with these emotions and these moods of the dog, keep them as real as they are, recognize the you know, the instincts and the different motivational systems, if you want, and learn how to control them and create this amazing picture, which translates so easily into any dog training that's outside sports, because any dog that has some problem somewhere ties into this kind of structure, and the ways we handle and the ways we develop dogs, the ways we control dogs, what we learn through those sports are very applicable in pet dog training. And I mean, like on the other aspect, the Mondial, I mean, the generalization, discrimination stages you were talking about, it's just like, you know, because I have a female that she's going for her 2 right now, and then I have my IGP dogs. I mean, I can put her on a downstay and thank God I don't forget her, because she's just gonna stay there because that's the game, right? She thinks that, yeah, this is a trick. I'm staying here. So how do you see kind of what I was talking, like how do they intertwine pet dog training, problems with aggression, and protection dog sports? What connections are you seeing if you think that way?
Well, in both cases, let's just put aside, you know, what we would define as aggression in like all the, like if we just look at the actual output behavior without a motivational state, is in the pet dog world something that is being looked, no, I want to say looked down on, but something that needs fixing, right? So we can have a dog to be aggressive towards strangers or other dogs because that would kind of pose danger to other people or dogs, which, you know, obviously makes sense. as like the societal structure that we have put together. What's interesting is that, and I talk about this a lot with others too, is it's a little bit almost hypocritical, because even as humans, as society, we love violence. We love being aggressive, beating up something or someone. We just put it into like a staged arena with like, two boxers getting at each other. And we pay a lot of money for it. Like the amount of money that goes into the most violent sports is kind of crazy compared to those who, I don't know, play dart and there's no violence happening. We love that. And there's like some animalistic kind of thing in us too that we still kind of entertain. And for some reasons with dogs, we don't appreciate that nature, that part of them. It needs fixing. It has to be stopped, rather than finding the same concept of outlet and structure that kind of scratches the itch without obviously causing damage to society. Being more integrative and being more speaking to the animal in front of us rather than what we're trying to stop constantly. And personal protection work or ring sport or what, obviously a dog that doesn't want to bite will not compete. So we kind of foster that behavior, but put it on a very clear kind of playground for the dog, right?
Right.
And finds kind of like a chance to let it all out while controlling these impulses. I don't even want to say it's an impulse. It's just a behavior that comes and has its reason in nature and probably is very rewarding for a lot of dogs. And so it is for humans, right? So we kind of see aggression everywhere in the animal kingdom. But with dogs, for some reason, we decided that makes a dog bad. And sure, there are dogs that are aggressive and that kind of are a danger to society, but it is not for all dogs that show aggression. It's for some dogs pure boredom, pure like the cry to find some purpose in their lives, and they speak to like the closest what gives them some sort of outlet for their frustration. So I think we kind of need to redefine how we see aggression. Sure, all these analyses of, is it fear-based, is it rewarding, is it habit, all that plays a part. But the outcome still, if it stays the same and it needs fixing, I think there's some, okay, maybe this dog needs an outlet that kind of speaks to the dog better.
Yeah. I made recently a little solo podcast thing about it was resource guarding. That's right. Because of the whole narrative that really any kind of aggression is fear-based. And of course, if you just keep peeling the onion and strip down to then everything is fear. And then really nothing is fear at this point. Then it's like, well, what are we, like, come on. And that's kind of like my take, like this is when I believe that, of course, there is some fear aggression. Of course, there is sometimes the dog is very concerned about their, self-preservation, well-being, or whatever they have, and, But then there is a whole different group of dogs that I kind of group them all under competing type of aggression that has a different purpose and searching for a very different outcome. And the cool thing about the two is that when let's say a dog is fearful and snaps at you for whatever reason as you're getting close, right? And you back off enough to where the dog is like, okay, I'm safe now. And it takes about 15, 30 seconds for that dog to just go back to its base. It's over because everything is done. To where when we have the competitive type of aggression that has a different intentions. There is something that the dog is trying to negotiate and insist on. Even after the confrontation, they're not done. They actually kind of look and it persists. And it's like, did you acknowledge that? Because if you didn't, I'll repeat, you know? Like it's about who's driving the car here. You know, it's a very different take. And when you have, you take either dog and you treat it the wrong way to try to fix it, it's gonna fire back, right? And what happens, I think, is that the force-free trainers generally are more successful with the dogs that are the aggression is fear-based, even though that's very, in my opinion, very small portion of dogs that are aggressive that way, and it's typically very easy because you just leave it alone and the dog is at peace and it kind of resolves it. But anyway, the force-free are way more successful because of their approach there, to where balance trainers are, or at least some balance trainers, because there's like levels there. They are definitely more successful with the other type of aggression because now there is, you know, even if it's a social hierarchy, whatever it is, but there is some structure, there is some negotiation that needs to some who is who here, right? And so I see how both camps can be right, but then you flip the dogs. And in both sides, they end up in a really bad, disastrous situation because, you know, you cannot work with fear-aggressive dog the same way we would do with the other and the other way around. And this is such a problem that we have, that, you know, we stick to narratives and not trying to find what works and why it works and in which cases it works. And instead, it's the one glove, the one size fits all. That seems to be in both camps, like on average, the idea. It's like, no, it's like, yeah, it works. Like, it works with my dog. It's like you know, I mean, somebody says, well, I don't need chemotherapy. It's like, good for you that you don't. But some people really, you know, that's the only thing that they probably have hopes for, you know. And we just mix it because of the little fights, and it's so stupid. And then, you know, like the ones that you were talking about, those experiences, this is I was about to talk about this anyway in the Marvin Zuckerman, the sensation seeking. It's a super crazy, like I will put the links to this to people to see, but it's I don't know, like late 70s or somewhere in there. He came up with some really cool stuff, and basically he originally, I think he was interested in sensory deprivation, kind of like what the military, like the CIAs and stuff do. But then started to realize that there is you know, the sensory deprivation actually leads to, of course, increased anxiety and this kind of weirdness. But then he realizes that there is also personalities, and he just goes really deep into it. And I think he revised it. It's called sensation seeking. And he made, I think, 4 or 5. He kept kind of refining his idea. And basically, he divided it in 4 groups: thrill seeking, experience seeking, disinhibition, and boredom susceptibility. I can never say this word. Susceptibility. And in the thrill seeking, like talking people, but it's just the same thing with dogs. These are, you know, the people and dogs that enjoy, they seek this risky activity, you know, some being sport, being whatever in life, but it's a potentially pretty dangerous experiences that produce this unique sensation. That's why he called it thrill-seeking sensation. And basically, really what you were talking about just a minute ago, other that everything else in your life is okay, if you're that type of personality, you will be seeking this type of adventures. This is, as you said, like in fact, you know what, I'll just play this video because it's so super cool. And I will leave it to play for people. But this is what we're talking about when we're talking about who wants to put themselves in situations like this. But let's play it real quick.
Treat just for you. Surprise! The smackball hands out a nasty part. 2-year-old bingo floor clerk. Oh, Ashley, go tell. Hey, I got the perfect call for a bingo clerk's wife. Oh, I beg to differ. Hi. No worries, Steve. The smackball has been greeting everybody just that gently all day. Oh, hello. Aloha. Konnichiwa.
Like, you know you're gonna get busted sooner or later.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Oh, and takes it to the face. She could be the first one to cry. Never mind. Is this guy. And this guy.
Oh,
I mean, it goes on and on. There is a master here.
I think I've got a new ear. Could be
He's like just, he's the champion.
Really fast. I reckon tough guy Jason's new record could be in trouble here. He's timing it. He really is timing. He's not taking the punches. He's timing his way round. I think I've got a new era. Amanda's in.
And then, of course, you have the MMA.
God.
Nobody forces them to do this. They're trying to do this because they know that it gives them that whatever rush, you know, like there is this, you know, like the same with the dogs, like seeking this kind of discomfort, adversity. It provides the stimulation and the challenge that they are actually really craving for the certain types of dogs. Now, would I do this to that extreme? Probably no. But are there people that love to do it for free? Absolutely, right? And then we have the dogs. So if you know, like when we're talking about like the 5 domains, right? It's such a popular conversation to have: the nutrition, environment, health, and then the behavior that leads to the right mental state. And now the nose work is the best thing ever, right, in the first 3. And the nose work, I mean, I do IGP, I do Mondioring. I mean, there is plenty of scent work in both sports, and I love it. I go every day tracking with my dogs. But I know that, you know, that's not for every dog. They will like to do it, but they will not get what they're really seeking. Like a thrill-seeking type of personality will never say, wow, that's all I need. They can do nose work, but they're gonna eventually be like, try to get some challenge, provoke some situation, create something simply because they're craving it. And as you said, if we don't give it to them in a controlled context, it goes into what we would call the behavioral problems. And And then you have, so back to him, how he made them, you know, you have these thrill adventure-seeking dogs. And the other thing, besides the nose work, this is like a oxymoron thing, even if you want, like, you have a force-free trainer. And again, nothing against this. Like, I somehow, sometimes seems like I'm against force-free altogether, and I'm not. I really not. But you have your training protection dog in sport, and that dog really is a thrill-seeking type of dog that thrives on some conflict, some challenge, and finding ways how to control it and how to, you know, that's what's about. And then you have the force-free trainer that is trying to do it without discomfort and aversive, while the dog is actually, the only reason he likes to do it is because he's trying to challenge it and overcome it. And, and it's like, okay, but all right, you know, if that's how you want to do it, that's fine. Then he has Marvin Zuckerman has the thrill seeking, then experience seeking, which is a level below, and it's very different. And that's kind of where you would think of, you know, like if it's a person, he will go hiking or do arts or something that is, you know, very stimulating, but it does not have that adversity seeking, challenge seeking. And in dogs would be what we were talking, you know, like you take fly ball, take agility, there is plenty of emotions that are flying, and it's just, you know, but it's a very different set that gets activated. And then the interesting ones that he puts is the other two, and the first one, or the third one in his order, is the disinhibition. And the disinhibition, basically, it's like, you know, like he says, it's kind of like with humans, he would say more of like, okay, well, it's like all party life and drugs and some kind of, you know, escape of situations. And finding reason of satisfying something, but it's kind of displacement, it's disinhibition. And we, in dogs, we can argue that we can see it in, you know, like your typical excessive, exciting type of dog that just has to walk on the flexi lead around the block. And they're like, well, he walks 5 times a day. Yes, but he still walks on a flexi lead 5 times a day. So he's losing its mind. And, you know, any kind of OCD, all this compulsive stereotypic behavior, all this, you know, it's just the lack of not having something that you're craving, and you're searching it, and it goes into this weird places, and then we're trying to fix it without realizing or without recognizing that it's not that hard to get fixed. Depending on, of course, everything has levels and some different reasons, but more or less in the bigger scope of things, the problems are lack of outlet. And that's when we say, well, we have the nose work. Yes, but I don't like nose work. I like to punch somebody in the face. I don't like to play chess, right? And if we don't recognize that, then it goes bad. And then the last one that he had was the boredom, I cannot say the
susceptibility.
Yes, yes. And this is basically, you know, it's kind of, they just lose concentration, interest, not even concentration, they just lose interest of whatever they're asked to do or they choose to do. Simply, again, though, because it doesn't touch the soft spot in their brain or heart that gets them engaged. When that happens, then it goes much, it goes on, and it can be the exact, what you would call repetitive stuff that you're doing, but it hits the home base, right?
Mm.
So that's kind of similar to, you know, when we talk about fear-based, then you have the competitive kind of whatever ranking, dominance, anything. I don't want to put words and people to start fighting over words. But then we have this sensation-seeking types that we need to recognize. And if whenever we're talking seriously about the 5 domains, nobody would ever argue, at least I wouldn't, with how important nutrition is, how important sleep is, how important the environment, the health. But when it comes to the mental state, what behaviors and what activities suits one individual? And then we make it, oh, let's everybody do nose work. And it's like, no, it cannot work. It just cannot work. Well, I'll let you talk a little bit, because I mean, it just blows my mind when you know, somehow always they have to pull the rug towards the direction of aversives are bad, discomfort is bad, stress, regardless of what kind of stress, is bad. The dog has to be able to choose. And do you really choose? And it's like, well, if I tell him to go ahead and buy the decoy, and he says, I don't want to buy the decoy, there is nothing in my knowledge that I can do to convince him to go and do it, right? Just like if you tell me go and fight this Saturday the MMA fights, it's like a hard no. Like, I don't care what money are we, like, it's just a no, you know? But you ask somebody else, and they will say, yeah, let's go right now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what are you thinking?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts.
I know I just went off here.
No, it's good. So just like something just along in line what I watched very recently on Netflix. It's called Physical Asia. And they're like different Asian selected athletes from different countries competing against each other. And it's a South Korean show, and the challenges are insane. It's not just something, it's like insane. And one of the challenges was to, for a certain amount of time, run on a treadmill. And then, you know, who ran the fastest ball. But like after that, like this guy, what he said, it was like, I was given everything, so much so I tasted the blood in my lungs or in my throat. He's like, that's how I knew I gave it my all. And like, this is crazy. Like I'm running, and I probably would never run to the point where I would taste the blood in my throat. And yes, they're competing, sure, for money. I don't think it's the external reward of money that makes you do that. I think there's something else that drives you. You have to be a certain personality that is willing to go that far to win, or to again, not to win something, just to win through that challenge itself, right?
Because you win. I mean, it is a win, but it's the biggest win is inside yourself.
Right.
That's really
Right.
the biggest win.
I don't think like the money they would have gotten, or they whoever won matters all that much in that moment. I don't think any external reward can make you perform that way in that moment, unless it's something that speaks to what's aligned with who you are, right? Like a dog that really likes to bite, the external reward is a decoy that you can bite. But I think it's not just because of the bite there, it's like what happens inside.
Yeah.
Doing that biting that makes that dog crazy for it. But like the whole aggression, understanding of aggression, research per se, you know, has for a very long time, researchers have been really interested in the concept of aggression, because it's not that simple. And we have in research far beyond the idea that it's always fear-based. Like no one, I'm going to say no one, obviously those who are interested in fear and fear aggression talk about it, but that conversation in research has expanded significantly over the last 10, 20 years. And one review kind of stood out to me where they took rats or mice, rats, I think. And rats, as we know, they're prey animals. They're prey animals. There is no reason for them to be liking aggression. It makes no sense to them. They don't have to necessarily, maybe the territorial aspect of it, sure. But like, you know, like a coyote or whatever chasing some prey animal actually has to show all this aggression to get food at the end. They don't really have to do that. And yet, and sure, it's a little bit of like selecting a certain strain. So it's a little bit under magnifying glass to look at it, but it doesn't mean it's not true. Sure, there's like they set up the experiment where the rats they could press a lever in order for a door to open, and there you have a submissive other rat that you can go and fight. Now, it is something about winning there, right? So it had to be a submissive mouse or rat, but they also had to go through the learning of I press the lever, then the door opens. And it's a sign for motivation. Like, are they willing to put effort into, are they willing to work to press the lever? And it's not just one lever, they experimented with this, how many lever presses are they willing to go through in order for the door to open? And they ran this with a bunch of rats, and about 1/3, if I could remember correctly, or maybe 2/3, they were like, sure, they kind of did it, but they weren't like crazy for it. They didn't go constantly to the lever, even if the lever was accessible to fight. And then there's maybe another third, no, that's like 2/3, maybe a little less than a third. They liked it. You know, they went up every time there was a lever, they would go and they would press it, and they would then go on and fight the other mouse. That shows like they find it rewarding. But then it was the smallest percentage, but nevertheless it was there. A subset of these rats that showed addictive-like behaviors towards getting into a fight with another rat.
Ta-da.
And what they did is when they saw the lever, like little crackheads, they would press on that lever frantically, like the door couldn't open.
Cannot wait, right?
They could not wait.
Yes.
Like, I'm gonna die on this lever, but I will fight. And again, these are prey animals. Now take a predator, take a dog, take like the percentage. I'm pretty sure if we could, there's any way to actually quantitatively measure this, the percentage of those that are addicted to this thrill or find it rewarding is probably more than half versus those who don't like it. And a lot of temperament and breeding plays a role here, sure. But that's how like a lot of the research now goes into what is it about this addictive behavior for some animals, and that applies to humans too. I mean, a lot of these animal model studies are really there to understand humans, not so much, they don't care really about fixing anything in the rat world. They just use them as animal models for humans too, and then dogs too. So yeah, there's no, we should talk about this rather than is aggression there, yes or no, or is it fear-based? You know, I find that super interesting. Like, you see this in other animals, you can measure it there, you see how much effort they're willing to put in that conflict, and that kind of effort that a dog is willing in order to find confrontation is a good measure for the motivational state behind it. And nothing brings fear in those situations.
Right, exactly. And you know, when it's genetically predisposition for this kind of sensation, right? It's a very different, and I think probably the biggest mistake is that we're just trying to get some kind of average of everybody, but when you do that, you really do a great disadvantage to those thrill-seeking, you know, genetically predisposition animals and humans that like to do that. And I mean, we do Malinois, and you know, like we breed working Malinois. You can see them from little puppies, what they do. You can see them, 15, 16 years old, half blind, half deaf, crippled, like you have to pull them on a harness to get to the bite, and give them the choices of high value food, toys. Well, they wouldn't be interested in mating at that point, probably. But let's say there is a female in heat. Like, there is no question that it's a very straightforward, I am going to do this because this is the highest of the highest that I ever get. And why? Because it's challenging, because I control it, because the big argument of, well, there is no agency, you're doing aversives. Well, yeah, if you do the aversive, and this is another, like, that study Schalke did 2007 with the beagles, the 3 groups, and basically everybody that, on the side of against aversive just grabbed a strong hold of that study of the 2 groups that were, you didn't need a study basically, because the one group, what they did was pretty much flip a coin and say, okay, yeah, let's shock. Totally non-contingent upon anything. And of course, what do you expect? And the other one was just as bad, because they paired the cue, the command here or come, with the shock. So it's simultaneous. So of course, no way to control it, no way to predict it. Same disastrous result. However, there is a 3rd group that nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Right? The group that it actually is contingent, that like you have the command, then the dog has a choice, and then there's different outcomes, different consequences. And it's so frustrating when that study gets cited. Like I've searched on the AIs how many times been cited, and I think it was like 90 times in strictly on the canine science, right? Not one time in those 90 times, not one time, they mentioned that when done, and it's contingent upon, it's highly effective, and besides the temporary stress to solve the puzzle, there is like zero welfare concern. And I don't know, frustrating. I was thinking to talk studies later, but here I am.
Yeah.
No, because they always talk about the agency and about the control, and it's like, what, the dog didn't choose to get shocked, did he? No, it didn't.
Yeah, that's what you said at the beginning. There's always like this twisting of words and facts and concepts that makes you like it reaches a point where like we're not talking rational or logical anymore. Now it's just like who can come up with like some crazier idea about justifying whatever you're trying to justify.
Right.
And that's like,
sorry to interrupt you, but I have to mention this one because I saw you had to, I don't know why you choose to, but you had to deal with Jenny that I had the 3-hour or
like
how long
game.
podcast I had, where eventually she was asking me why I don't do this to tigers. And it was like, that's now where we are, like, why I'm not doing this to tigers.
Oh gosh, yeah. I should have written down like all these things that's just that makes me feel speechless. I don't even know how to respond to that anymore. Like why are we talking about tigers or anything else super
Right.
unrelated to that? Like the amount of analogies that we come up with defeats the point of analogies. I talked about this before too. An analogy is there to kind of make a concept understood easier, not to completely come up with like a new
Take you off the rails, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, and like, I mean, tell the dog to lay down before the bite. The dog knows very well what to do and says, I'm not going to wait right now. I'm going to take my bite and I'm taking a chance. And there is a not so good outcome for him. But he made that decision and he took that risk, and sometimes it might work. This is what I believe it's part of why they like the game, because they understand at some point the rules. And of course, when we have rules, we try to bend them and see how much we can bend them. And when you can, and then you have to play by the rules at the same time. And that becomes, you're totally under control, but you're making the choices in different situations, how you want to act. And that's what makes that game, if we're talking protection sport right now, that's what is huge part of the game that makes it interesting, of like, okay, I'm really losing my mind. I really have to go with that decoy and really show him. And I'm saying, no, not right now. And now we have to negotiate and we have to cooperate. We have to find a way how. Ultimately, the dog is always in control of where they can guide the situation. So it would be very different if somebody starts to do what I mentioned with Schalke study, just totally like flip a coin shock, flip a coin crazy leash pop, or simultaneous conditioning, or I mean, there is many ways to do it wrong, but there is also a way to do it right. And any trainer that's successful, they have no choice but to do it right at the end of the day. And doing it right means the dog has agency at that point. There's cannot be argued about, but that is a big argument for some reason.
It's interesting because when you say do it right and good trainers learn how to do it right. Some arguments we hear a lot, and I'm sure you've heard that a lot too. It's like, yeah, you have trained and successfully competed at the highest level. You know what you're doing, but there's so many trainers who don't know what they're doing. They're using e-collars and they're shocking the dogs, and that's why we need to ban this, because they do not know how to do it right. And then the other goes hand in hand with that is, well, the timing in order to use punishment has to be impeccable. It has to be like within a millisecond for the dog to understand it. And it's one of these other extremes that they're taking the conversation to, because I don't think that's true. And I don't think data tells you that's true. And I also think experience-wise, the two things that happen. Dogs are a lot more intelligent than we think, than people treat them in terms of learning. If you're off by a second or two, but you're somewhat consistent in that realm, the dog might not be perfect in like for competition behavior, but if it's like a pet dog training, they will learn, they will figure it out, and they will figure it out despite the mistakes that we make, because they're not stupid, right? And the other thing is also that for me, it's like, okay, let's assume you're a new upcoming trainer. And I'm fairly young in my, at least for the sport world, career, or journey. There has been certainly some things that I make mistakes, have made mistakes already. But because I'm also young at this, fresh in this, I'm also very careful of these things. I don't know anyone who just starts out to put an e-collar on and unconditionally or like non-contingentally zaps the dog around to the point where the dog is traumatized. Those are trainers that have done this. Those who do that have done this for a very long time, and they deserve to be called out.
Yeah.
But not the young ones who seek out education, or young ones in their journey, or like trying these things, and they need to give them the space to learn these things in a non-judgmental way, so that we can actually then differentiate between those who kind of like don't care about the welfare of dogs or don't care about improving their techniques and call them out, and those who are actually in the learning process and make a mistake or two. But the dog will be okay. Like there is,
Yeah.
the dog experiences pain for a second, sure, whatever training, maybe yelps for a moment. None of these things have ever been indications of compromised welfare. There are other factors that matter much more.
Yeah,
And
especially looking into the long-term outcome of you know, sometimes the choices people have to make for their dogs are very challenging and very difficult too. And with the electric collars, I agree with you. I actually, I think I say this quite often. Yes, they are available to buy at PetSmart. Yes, they're available to buy online. And yes, people buy them because we know they buy them. Like I sometimes talk to some of the owners of the electric collar companies. It just happens to, I don't really know any of them like on a personal level, but anytime I have an option in person to meet and talk, one of the questions that I ask is like, how are the sales going? Because it's interesting for me, because that's a very solid data of what's happening out in the real world. And the most interesting part is Europe, with the biggest brags of how the bans and how, you know, I mean, it's what, 2003, 2004, it's when the whole thing started with Van der Bork and Schindler, that study. The sales increase every year. Like in 2025, December, right now, compare the sales anywhere in the European Union to last year, they're higher. And that tells you that, first of all, legislations are not working, but it raises also a concern because people buy them, they don't know, because it has to be, it's taboo, so it's behind doors, or you go somewhere and instead of really doing a good work with it, you have this one time, so it's not the optimal way to work with electric collars. But do they? Yes. And they would say, well, you only know about sport world people. And that's not true. Sport world is quite small, especially protection sports. So you cannot sell, you can sell so many electric collars to the sport people, right? But the sales go, and I guess the biggest problem with everything that we are facing right now is, do aversive, first of all, have any place in modern dog training? And is R plus, with all the counter-conditioning, desensitization, premix principle, differential reinforcement, let's name them all, can all that substitute and not do better, but just do as good without aversives? And it's a hard no. It's like it's not, there cannot be argument, which we bring the studies for that too, but we don't even need studies because it's just, they're innate motivational systems that once they get triggered, this is it. And sure enough, there are levels. Yes, there is a dog that kind of butterfly hops towards a squirrel and you say, hey, come, I give you something. And they're like, sure, I come. And then there is the other dog that is like, no, that thing is going to die right now. And that's the end of the story. And what is really crazy is that they don't even need this, you know, it's biologically programmed. They don't even need to have to kill 2 squirrels already. It's kind of like the, the funny joke about how the rabbit knows to run away from a fox. It's just like, well, it's not through experience. Once the fox gets it, it's dead, right? But we fool each other when we talk about the possibilities of R+. We really fool each other, and then we create studies that are so easily, there is no evidence in those studies that what the claim is that actually works. And I think this is the biggest thing. And once I don't think, I was going to say once we agree, but we will never agree on this with them. But if we were to agree that aversives have a place, then we can come to the conclusion that the electric color is arguably the safest of all aversives because of control and level of intensity and so on and so on. And it just triggers what it needs to trigger in a brain, but it's a false alarm, but it's highly effective, right? I mean, that's why they did all the studies with electric. They used to bang them and hit them and pinch them, and all the birds and rats got injured in the first 2 tries, and they cannot make a study, right? So I think it's really about, is it even possible to talk about the use, not the use, but the importance of aversive, because there is really no substitute to it in certain situations.
Or like in general, like we treat aversive control and positive reinforcement as if like they're just 2 sides of the same coin, and if you don't use this, you do the other. And that's like utter nonsense. Like in the whole animal kingdom and biology or nature, there is no replacement for one or the other. They both have their own evolved systems and serve a certain function. Ultimately, it comes down to survival of the fittest, or the one who can reproduce the best and seek pleasure and avoid discomfort. There is no flip-flopping back and forth. And you can get to a certain extent with one or the other as like a primary training method, if you will. But don't underestimate the fallout something will have if you think you can completely replace one with the other. And it goes in both directions, right? I mean, I don't know anyone who really just uses punishment. That would be, even though, you're probably, I think you're known to be the punishment-based trainer and you don't use any rewards in your training, but there is no replacement. And the fallouts that people don't want to see because they are a little more subtle maybe, but for me, equally detrimental to the welfare of dogs, is creating, for one, the illusion that you can fix something and put a dog through like a 6-month, 5-month, 4-month training system that does nothing but add conflict, because you're trying to convince a dog to do something for something the dog does not care about much.
Right.
That becomes aversives, like take this freaking treat or this freaking play, toy, whatever, and stop chasing the squirrel, differential reinforcement stuff, right? Like, I don't want to. So now you're like there, okay, well, either I keep you on the leash and manage you, but the dog doesn't want, or you take something, and there's a place for that in training too, right? Where dogs have to learn to take something of lesser value, maybe to access something else of bigger value later on.
Right.
But that cannot be always like that.
No. That's the magic of the desensitization thing that they, it's like, of course, there are plenty of places where you can do it, but try to do it with some innate predatory motor pattern thing. And it's going to work until the moment when that heart just skips a beat and that dog makes that look, and now the system is activated. And end of story. And then what kind of makes them believe, I think what really makes them believe that they are on the right track is because up to that point they were successful, because the trigger was dormant. And as soon as you take it just one notch below, the trigger is dormant again, and it's working again. And it makes you think that you just need more time now.
Take a step back.
Right? And how do you explain that when somebody is so convinced that they can do it?
When it comes to like the reward system, let's talk about the reward system, right? So that is nuanced as well. And evolutionarily, seeking out external rewards in terms of like food per se, just scavenging and finding a bush that has some fruit, like we are living in the wild, and we've never been there before, and we're going around the corner, and there's a bush, and it has like these pears or whatever. It's not a bush, but like a tree or whatever. And we're like, oh wow, that is very tasty. And we'll go back to that tree over and over to get that pear. But there will be a time where we'll be like, well, if I found a tree with tasty pears, maybe there's somewhere a tree with something even better,
Right.
or more trees with more pears. So the seeking is kind of set up so that we will always try to seek more. That's why we're all addicted to our phones or whatever, the dopamine hit, right? We're kind of trying to get something more and more and more. And that's true for like, you get a piece of food and eventually that piece of kibble is not enough. So you have to level up, right? So there's always a time where the dog makes a choice. Either I kind of try to exploit this a little more and get more from you, or I go out and seek something else. And there is you hit a ceiling, we as humans hit a ceiling because there's just so many sausages or steaks we can produce, but the system doesn't hit a ceiling. The system, the dopamine seeking system, will never be satisfied completely for forever, always seeking something else. But I do think, and I haven't found any clear data because you can't really measure that much, like with the predation and in the moment stuff. But I think it's a little different with the internal, sensational, rewarding, exciting, whatever feeling, arousal for like these innate behaviors like chasing, stalking, going after something. That will always be magnitude in its way once it's in, and it kind of aligns with the dog wanting to do that.
Right.
Meaning you basically are there left with competing externally with a reward. There will never be enough. Plus, you also want to compete with something
Because they're just not the
innately-
priority at those moments. Just at
Yes.
those moments. Otherwise, they are working phenomenally well. But at those moments, they don't. And that's where
Yeah.
the confusion comes, as you talk about.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think this internal thing that drives behavior that is independent of external reward because it's not dependent on the dog actually catching the squirrel will be more powerful than being dependent on external rewards. And you can compete with that by offering something else instead, because it's a lose situation for the dog. It's like, I don't even know what you have right now is what I want or need, but this right now feels amazing to me. And on top of it, I might chase and catch the squirrel. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Probably then it's going to get boring.
That's true.
Whatever.
That's true too. Yeah, that's very true.
So the competing part there is like something else that is internally driven, which is avoidance behavior. And avoiding discomfort, avoiding that learn to, comes with its own relief, rewarding sensation once you successfully avoided it, is kind of like a better competitor to the internal rewarding activity than it is to have an externally rewarding activity.
Right. And then it opens the door to, you can reward pretty much anything you want.
Right.
Right.
Then you can come in with your differential
Yes.
reinforcement,
Yes.
it's like, sure, all these things that you guys are talking about.
Because now
great.
the dog is back to, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
but it doesn't work that way. Even in a conversation, we cannot get to agreement to this. And I don't think it's a matter of not understanding this. I am sincerely, genuinely puzzled why this is still an argument. Because, okay, I mean, somebody like, just like the many people on social media that they're just spoon-fed the narrative, okay, that's besides the conversation. But there's people that understand, because this is not complicated. This is really not like some astrophysics. It's a clear, just different biological motivation systems, like the predatory hierarchy, sex drive, the sensation seeking, all this. Like even if we understand this subconsciously, but somehow Skinner said one day that society is going to be free of aversives, and that R plus gonna just be the best thing ever on planet Earth. But nobody asked, well, that didn't happen. I mean, that was a long time ago, and it still didn't happen. And it wasn't because of lack of effort. Even his errorless learning never ever took off. Besides Eduardo Fernandez's life thing and his errorless learning study, where he proved that trial and error dogs suck and the other ones are so much better off. And I don't know if you've read that one, but that's mind-blowing too, because out of how many dogs were there, only 8 finished. The other ones kind of lost interest even the errorless learning dogs. They just lost interest. But it doesn't even say, it doesn't say probably because nothing happens, but when you're talking about trial and error learning, you have to explain what happens when they make the error. And that just left in a blank. So it makes you think, well, did anything happen? Or they had to kind of have some discovery, aha moments, I don't know. Clearly we have to have consequences on Earth. I mean anything. You have a plant, and there is sun and there is shade, and there is water and there is not so much water. And different plants will choose a very dramatically different environment. They're plants, right? But we are like, oh no, everybody needs this amount of water and this amount of sun. No, that's not how life works. And I think that's just the hardcore. I don't think all Force 3 people think this way, but the hardcore, the people that are after the legislation and the bans, their objective is to get rid of any use of aversives. And unfortunately, they're not providing a substitute. Because if there is a substitute, why not? I would consider it. Why would I not? I mean, why would I not? Right? And even then, we still have to recognize the sensation-seeking, the thrill-seeking dogs, that they, besides behavior problems, just like somebody likes rock climbing, somebody likes punching the face, there is that whole other reason why aversives are good. I mean, you take the little kid that gets bullied at class, that struggles at home with his second mom or whatever, and there are a few different paths that can happen, but quite often the best one is going to some martial arts school, and hopefully there is a good community, and you become a good kid.
Right.
And the same happens with I had this one podcast here, 6.5 hours, and I don't know how I'm gonna I really don't want to edit it,
Yeah, don't.
but we're kind of talking over each other. I don't know, but eventually I'm going to post it. But I was explaining how, because anytime somebody disagrees with, or anytime somebody wants to kind of, I don't even know what word to use here, kind of diminish my position. It's like, well, you're a sport trainer. You're working with this highly selected, highly bred, highly whatever. It's like, no, I train pet dogs, and I train dogs with problems since 1991. This is a very fucking long time. And every time, every day in my kennel, I have some really interesting, crazy, hardcore, difficult case because it's interesting. And I'm trying to help. I was trying to tell them that a shy dog, being, picture anything, any dog you pull from the shelter or some whatever, some mixed little breed, that it's lacking confidence. It doesn't necessarily have like some strong genetic like noise sensitivity, something that we cannot deal with. But basically it's a confidence thing. It's like, okay, you try to pet him and he cowers and doesn't avoid and so on, and highly aware of everything, very concerned. You put him, you have again two choices. You can comfort and provide stability and never resolve and build the confidence, or you can provide the discomfort or the fear, that demon that is in there, in a very controlled level, and allow and teach and show the dog how to succeed over it. So it's either comfort or overcome, and basically where the recent conversations you've been having about resilience and stuff, like that, you cannot ever accomplish resilience through comfort. Nobody that wants to become, I can do this. This is not a choice that you're searching comfort. You're trying to overcome something, and you need the right dose, you need the right, of course you need the right setup and everything. It has to be done properly. But if you really want to build up self-confidence, which is all the time happens, it's strictly about controlling and overcoming challenges that are adverse in some way, right? I talk a lot.
No, I like it. And obviously it's a very passionate topic, because the way I think, like, there are tools, like the e-collar and the prong collar and aversive tools, and it's one category, and we can sometimes get stuck on tools, yes or no, but then that kind of provides the ground for the certain communities to say, well, I can do the same, most of it, without the tools. Why would I have to use it? But it's kind of a very narrow-minded view. You got to zoom out a little bit and mean, in the bigger picture, it's like, it's about overcoming adversity, stress. It's about the whole thing about stress and resilience.
Yes.
And a dog that has never had to overcome anything adverse. And there are a lot of like force-free trainers that say we do use stress, and I would like to know how that actually looks like. I never got to that conversation. But in my mind, there is obviously overcoming some challenge in order to gain a reward at the end, sure. But there's also something to be said about overcoming something the dog just does not like in that moment, even if there isn't a reward waiting. Because that is sitting in that discomfort, coming out of it. And sure, you can sweeten the deal per se and say, like, yeah, whatever, there can be a reward, but it's not for the reward. I'm not doing it for the reward, overcoming that challenge. And that part is outside the realm of force-free or reinforcement, positive reinforcement only. You cannot apply these concepts in a purely rewarding way. And I've gotten a lot of hate for that. But I do think that because the force-free community is
But do you
very,
think it's because they don't understand what you're saying, or because they don't like what you're saying?
I don't think they don't like what I'm saying. I
Right.
think they understand it. And everyone who has lived longer than 18 years on this planet has experienced it themselves, because there has been a moment where they had to do something that they didn't want to do and they didn't get rewarded for it, and they had to do it anyways, and they didn't die, and they probably came out better, and probably when they're 40, 50 years old, they're going to tell their children, you know, there was a time when I had to do these things that I didn't like, and I had to do it anyway. We all tell these stories, and there are books after books after books that are being published, the discomfort crisis, or the challenge is the way, where we talk about the pain and the discomfort and how this makes us stronger. And of course, the nuances in the setup has to be right, so it does for the dog. But an anxious, timid dog needs to be able to understand that working through the discomfort is not the end of it. And
It would be
that's
the biggest accomplishment for that dog. They would really
probably,
be like, things changed.
yeah, it's
Right?
like, "Oh, shit, I can do this. I
Right.
can be
Right.
someone who keeps the head up high, and I don't have to hide or avoid." And obviously they don't have that conscious thought, but there are neurobiological systems that are in place to create this emotional state of, oh, I actually feel good about myself right now. That's weird. Let's do this again. Let's try
Well,
the challenge again.
Melanie, let me ask you this then. If that's the case, do you think they do it? I mean, the R plus people, because they know that it has a place, but they really believe that the majority of people on Earth cannot apply it right, do not understand it, and it will lead to massive abuse of dogs all over the world. And it's some sort of prevention. Like, would that be a reason why they do it? They're so hardcore.
Based on the comments that I get, and it's just, for example, in the context of asking the dog for consent to get handled, that's, for example, one of the things where I don't necessarily have a reward. If I need to clip your nails, I need to clip your nails, and you have to learn to hold still. And I may give you something, but maybe I'll just move on with life right after,
Yes.
because I don't, whatever. And that's one of these examples where I'm like, you know, that's potentially stressful and adverse to a certain level. My dog rather is not in that situation. And it's good for the dog to learn to work through that.
Mhm.
The comments I get is usually, well, if everyone would take this for face value, that means they all would kind of like force the dog and potentially be super violent that way, and I don't know, wrestle this dog down and clip the nails, and that's not necessary because that would lead to abuse. And I think I understand where they're coming from. I understand that concept, but that narrative comes from a place of, because they've never experienced it themselves, right? And they've never done it that way potentially themselves for it to go so horribly wrong, or they have seen someone who really, you know, has done it the wrong way. And I'm all about education, right? I'm all about, sure, that's, you know, if you need to kind of teach the dog first to a still cue and you reward for that, but you gotta, like you said at the beginning with your own dog, you gotta experiment with like what works and what doesn't, and you're not gonna break your dog with one session of like
Right.
maybe not going well because you held the dog's paw and the dog got really upset about it. And the research, the science is telling us very, very clearly that resilience happened in those moments where we overcome a challenge, where animals overcome a challenge, and that is more generalizable.
And it's not even really, not only, sorry to interrupt, because and the way my brain works, I will totally forget it. And hopefully you
Go
are
for
not
it.
like me and you can keep going once I said, but it's not just resilience, it's also a big element of trust there. That trust is like, you know, the big argument of your dog's gonna just fear you for life, and when you lose their trust, and actually these are the moments that trust kind of gets exposed for what it is. And if it's there, and if you understand how you handle the situations, that's one of the huge benefits of all of the, as an outcome. It's because of that, you know, I mean, there's has to be sometimes things will go wrong, and go wrong doesn't, I know people now will start thinking some shocking and abusing, and go wrong meaning anything, you know, like we can get confused or whatever, but there is the conflict resolution skills to where it's like, okay, I don't like you to cut my nails. That process of me convincing you to trust me that I will clip your nail, and there is no any other outcome. I'm not bargaining with you about it, but just that conversation that we're gonna have, and I convince you that I clip your nail. This, no forced negotiations can reach that level of trust and cooperation. It's just not possible, because there is no need for that in their world. Anyway,
Right.
I really, I don't know.
No, I agree. And that reminds me, like, there's this idea also, like, you know, how the narrative goes, like, you are your dog's #1 person. So you would harm the trust, punishment or whatever should never come from you.
You're right.
It's
Yes.
the opposite. It should never come really from someone the dog doesn't know, because that leads to the wrong outcome of like, now I hate you, or like, I don't want to work with you. But if anything, you're the only qualified person to apply any kind of training method effectively because of the trust and because of the social reconciliation you can have after. And that's very, very, very meaningful to the relationship, more so than anything else, like, well, not anything else, but more so than just the rewards per se that you produce and provide. And in the same way, you know, like, I wouldn't holding my Ollie's paw to clip his nails and knowing kind of like he will try to wait for a moment.
Yes.
I wouldn't do that necessarily with a dog I don't trust or know either, right? It goes both ways. Like, we know each other, we know our limits, and I know this is not tipping over, and this is
Correct.
not gonna
100%.
make
And I mean, I just to stay with that nail example, because I know people will go off in all sorts of direction. It doesn't mean that you grab the paw and the dog is trying to move away and you're like, there is no chance, you're losing that battle.
yeah,
No.
right. No,
If he
no.
freaks out and says, hold on, I'm really freaking out, yeah, I would let him go and show him that he has that option. And then we come back to it again. It's definitely not the picture of, you know, let's just squash him down and he cannot move and he just clip those nails no matter what. That's not what we are talking about.
No, no. And that's what they usually take it to that
Yes.
point. Because it sounds like this is what we are saying. And what I'm saying is, like, in the realm of modern dog training, we don't talk about brute force in any of those things. All of those require some level of skill and nuance. And if you're not there yet, you can learn that. That's what education is for. But we can't always take it to the extreme that way, right? So yeah, I think that's one of those things that have so many benefits. And sure, you can do all the green light, red light, consent behavior training, and it might be a relationship experience in different ways. But what happens to your dog if it will have to get handled elsewhere? The vet is a classic example. Or has to get you have to examine your dog because there is something stuck in the paw that hurts. And here comes the same what I said earlier. Now, if something hurts, you have an instinctive avoidance triggered behavior triggered in that dog. Because the dog is like, I don't want you to touch it. Because the brain is like, we need to protect it, don't touch it. And then on top of it, it layers in the learned behavior of saying, hey, you taught me that I always can completely avoid that situation because I'm giving you the red light, more or less. Now you're adding two conflicts. You're adding the conflict, but now I have to the dog doesn't know the difference between what I mean now, I don't want to now, especially I don't want to now. The dog doesn't know the difference of now you really have to. And on top of it, the dog is already stressed and hasn't learned to work through this concept of I'm stressed a little bit and I don't want to, right?
To their
And
defense, they will say, well, we have gabapentin and trazodone. It's like, yes, you do. But
you don't
you're
have to.
still missing the big picture of,
Right.
of a dog trusting you, that sometimes life is just brings these things that you deal with, and you come out, something very good comes out of this kind of situations. You know, like and I wish I can talk to some, I mean, I'm gonna talk about this with, I have a forestry trainer coming to my podcast, hopefully. You know, they very often, we schedule it, and then they put it away and put it away and put it away. And I keep reminding them for 5-6 months, and finally I don't think you want to do it. And then they get offensive, and it's like defensive, and it's like, well, if you talk like this, no, then we're not doing it. You know, but hopefully I have that conversation with this guy soon, like this week. And one of the things is, you know, like you take a game, you take possession games like tug of war game, and you have 2 directions to teach the dog to let go. The one would be to offer something different and basically make that not interesting in whatever shape or form. And the other one is to keep it as interesting as it possibly can be and have this bubble bath of brain chemicals that are saying, let's go, and make him control himself or herself and do that out. And then accept that there will be some consequence if needed, and it's going to be something aversive. But you're maintaining that state, and you're creating cooperation in that state, which is the interesting state that you want the dog to be at. So if you're playing tug of war, but the dog is not really, it's kind of when we were talking about chasing a squirrel, there is 2 ways to chase a squirrel. One is like, oh, look at this thing hopping, I'm going after it. And the other one is, I'm killing you right now. And it's the same how you can play tug of war. And the one has extremely cool benefits in terms of making certain agreements between you and the dog, and learning how you can control behavior through cooperation and not universal suppression, but also making it super interesting. Or you can keep the game in that really lame level that the dog never gets to experience what possession game really is. The first one has, yeah, I get so hot about this because I think I can teach them to let go without aversives. Sure, everybody can, like everybody can. I can promise you that if I play with that dog and you play with that dog and he outs for you for a treat and he outs with me because we made an agreement and we put that dog in front of the 2 of us and choose which one that dog wants to play with, regardless if it's a highly well-bred Malinois or very spooky border collie bull mix. The majority of dogs will go for the challenge because they want to control it, because they know how to control it, which tells you, again, that there is that innate desire to challenge yourself. And nose work is not a challenge. There is discomfort. There is like different thing when a rat terrier goes underground, you can give him any rat on top of the ground. You can give him whatever chicken you want. But if there is a rat in the ground, or whatever it is in the ground, and they may come out half blind and bleeding, and guess what? They will go in the next hole with even more enthusiasm because of the nature of what's about. And I can never explain this to a force-free trainer for some reason.
Yeah, well, like I think again, let me give you that reminded me of this. I think it's a good way of categorizing this. So when we talk about behaviors that we want to see, and you talked about in the example of, you know, letting go and but then going back to the game with that item of interest rather than diverting the interest, rather than diverting the interest onto something else,
Yes.
hoping that the dog is kind of like, okay, I let that go to get this one, but I really didn't want to let that go in the first place. And just, you know, you kind of diverted the interest. So in a way, the dog has not learned now to out when there isn't necessarily the other option,
Correct.
right? Or hasn't learned to out the object of interest when it stays the sole object of interest. And what happens a lot in terms of the learning aspect is when we talked about at the beginning about generalization, how context matters. And everyone knows context matters. The dog knows I'm in a training room or I'm in an open field. But I don't think sometimes we underestimate how much context matters because the internal state is also context, meaning where your focus was, if you feel hungry or like don't want food, if you have high arousal or low arousal, that is context. And the importance of context for the brain is kind of like the way I describe it is the dog might not exhibit any given behavior yet, but the dog went into the library, into the shelf that says outside, and has now all the books represent the potential behaviors that the owners is going to ask. And one of those could be high arousal. One shelf is like, at high arousal, I'm going to be asked this. At low arousal, I'm going to be asked to redirect onto something and not worry about the lure that is dead on the floor, right? But those behaviors don't apply in other contextual internal environments unless the dog learned to apply those behaviors in those environments. So dog, again, high arousal, really going for something, wanting that, and not having any other redirected behaviors or redirected rewards, needs to learn to out if that is something that what the end goal is, right? And I think we sometimes have to go backwards in terms of like, what do you want? Pet dogs, what do you want with your dog to do? Like, in what situations do you think you need your dog to out? Or what would make your life more joyful if you had a dog that outs the tug when you play really wildly and let loose and are uninhibited with your dog, but yet, you know, need to out every now and then? Or do you always have to have like stuffing the treat in the dog's face to make them out at that high arousal level? And that has helped me a lot to understand certain behaviors, but also what you just said with like liking the challenge. Something that I found very interesting, what I observed with Ollie. So he takes the bite work very seriously. He's not the sporty one who's like, oh, I'm having fun, I'm getting like exercise. He's like really personal, but
He's
like, he
involved.
likes, yes,
I like it.
like he loves that challenge, that fight. He doesn't like do zoomies and has like a possession zoomie, whatever. He's like, no, I don't need that. I'm just gonna come right back at you with this. And in bite work, when we did some bite sessions with Michael, his out was actually much cleaner because for him it was worth the effort
Yes.
to out quickly and go back to
Continuation. Yes.
yeah. And then when I played with the little ball on the string, his out got like really, really messy. And it's like, whatever equation, economics equation we think we're doing with like, I'm giving you a treat instead, the dog has its own economic equation and calculations, what's worth and what's not. And if this isn't aligned with what we need the dog to do, then we have to help other ways, right? And the dog will be able to learn because now you added another thing to the equation, as of like, you also have to a little bit quicker if this is within the realm of possibilities. And yeah, you gotta see this and experience this. Like, he outed so cleanly and quickly, and I'm like, I was hanging behind him on his harness, like, when did that? He never did that. It's so beautifully. And like, these are the little moments what I said at the beginning, is like where I see certain things that I know and have read about in like scientific concepts, but now I see it play out in front of me, and it's very
That's very cool. Yeah,
interesting.
that's super examples. And of course, there is plenty of times for positive reinforcement. I mean, how come that it's when positive only trainer has nothing, seems to have nothing else to say? It's like, well, no, you're simply just punishing dogs, and that's not learning. I mean, who does that? Who does that, really? And are there bad trainers? Of course there are bad trainers. But are you gonna change them somehow? By taking the electric color, or
Right.
how are you gonna change? This is personality, this is whatever it's, you know. And then the big, how are you feeling about the industry being licensed? I've been both ways all the time, but yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know about license and having this as a requirement for being a dog trainer, like a professional dog trainer making money, if it means it kind of steers the education into one direction.
Yeah.
Either direction.
That's I think this is the reason why it shouldn't happen, because it cannot just go this way. That's not education no more.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a big one for them. I think people that do bad things with animals, there has to be consequences, but I think there are consequences. I mean there is animal care and control, there is police, there is government agencies, there is jails, there is fines. Like, it's just a matter of making enough awareness. Well, there is this place that's doing really bad things, and then investigate it. But don't put this false alarm on trainers that
Right.
you just saw a dog on a prong collar.
Right.
Well, come on, like, seriously.
I think that's the problem, that we have like this false alarm constantly happening, and like, even like take me as an example, right? Like, I don't even train pet dogs one-on-one anymore, right? I do some virtual sessions, I do canine conditioning and fitness, right? And then I talk about the research. And then there's like someone saying this is malpractice, and others kicking me off canine science conferences because I'm abusing dogs. And I'm like, and people jump to that. It's like, you have no, like, even if it was true, you're still gonna have to produce some evidence of that, and there is literally none. And you see my dogs that I share every now and then, they don't look abused, and yet you go just by what I'm talking about. So now we're creating this where everyone is potentially abusing dogs. Well, guess what? The ones that actually then abusing dogs are just hiding behind that
Right.
false,
Right.
because it matters
Yeah,
anymore.
that's kind of, I don't want to get in human politics, but that's the same thing with, like, now everybody is a Nazi. The moment somebody doesn't like somebody, and it's just turning it into, like, come on, like, we've lost our common sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Germany, what do you think about this one, the latest dog welfare thing with the the written test before you have a
Oh my
dog.
God.
It's like, okay, well, let's not forget that you should feed your dog. Like
Yes.
the dog also eats. Or yeah, if it poops, you can scoop it with the poop bag. Like what have we, where are we going?
Well, I didn't look at actually at first I thought it's a scam. Like when I said it, oh, this must be this must be not true. And I didn't look at the actual questions that they're asking. But like if you compare overall the welfare of dogs in Germany, I would say it's better than it is in the US
I
on
agree.
average.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not because dog owners will now have to take a test. It's a whole like mindset around.
It's a
and
culture. It's a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
And it starts with little things like my friends in Germany, when I got my first dog who was rescued from a shelter, and I told my particular friend, dog trainer friend in Germany, like, well, he's like, oh, and then make sure he's not around females in heat, of course. I'm like, well, he's neutered, and he like first he thought I made that decision, and he judged me real hard, like the German way, and I'm like, no, this is every dog here is pretty much neutered, and he couldn't believe it. Like
Yeah.
for him, it just did not make any sense. And then I said, well, it's because we don't want them to have unwanted litters. And he's like, well, then just
Do
don't
the
let them.
right thing.
He didn't get it, right? And it starts there, but it doesn't end there. There are like other things that, and again, it's not every dog owner, but when I grew up, there was no one in my near environment, because we all lived kind of like in apartment buildings. No one had a dog. No one had a dog. And the amount of like thinking that actually I think goes into, it's like, do I have time? Can I walk the dog twice a day? At least when I grew up, that was kind of like, no, you can't. Well, then
Then you
dog is out
just
of the
don't.
question.
Yeah.
And do you have money to go, not just to feed the dog, but do you have money to afford training? Because I don't know anyone who doesn't go from the beginning,
True.
the dog training, not just when problems show up. And so now having to have that test is like, man, you don't even know how good you're already doing. Like you really
Right.
don't need to add all these things, because now it gets to the extreme of a crate is apparently also not good for a dog in
Yeah,
Germany.
certain hours. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think they did this. I mean, at least what I heard from my friends in Germany, I think the whole idea started because of the bully breeds and trying to put some kind of regulation. So it's like, well, if you do that, then. But then these are ridiculous tests that,
Yeah.
like there is probably, I would be very curious, what is the failure rate on this test? Like,
Yeah.
is it 0.5? And if that's the case, what's the point? Like, is it just some kind of, okay, we're doing something. Like in this interesting one, we had a few years back, just like how it happens periodically in different parts of the country here, the all positive will kind of try to infiltrate a region or a city and try to sneak some legislation, and then of course some noise is made and they always fail, and I hope that continues to happen. But there was a situation 2017 or 18 here in Tampa, and we made all the dog trainers went to the meetings. I mean, there were a bunch of meetings, and finally what happened was we came to this agreement that, well, let's find out let's give it some time and see what really happens. Let's keep track. And basically there was a decision made that if you have a pet training business, when somebody comes for training, you present your plan, your protocol of training. If you're going to use aversive, if you're going to use electric collar, that's discussed and it's signed that the owner is in agreement. And then eventually there is some follow-up if there was some back, blow-ups and bad things happening. And that went on for, I would say, 2 years. Like everybody that trained dogs here literally had to do this for every single person. We would write the plan and then we would send it to the whatever pet commission. And somehow it just faded away. Nobody talks about it no more. And I mean, in some way I understand, because there is nothing is really happening. Like there's just nothing happening. Now, on another side, we had another law, and this kind of the differences sometimes in different states and different parts of the country, but around here, sometimes people tend to put their dogs on a tie-outs. So there was a law against that, which is not a bad law. However, somebody has to go and follow up and drive around and actually do the things that you say that are not supposed to be happening. You have to control it. Nobody does. So there's just a lot of noise and make you feel good kind of legislation, and then it just kind of goes away. Unless what happens in Europe, and I don't know how much the force-free people really believe that there is no prong collars and there is no electric collars. And I mean, it would be, I don't know, it would be dishonest to even say that this is not the case. Simply because, again, there is no proof. There is just never been a proof that you can control certain innate motivational systems in any other way when they get activated. I mean, the China, Cooper, Mills, that double, 2014 and 2020 or whatever it was. I mean, besides the stupid things that, okay, not stupid things, but controversial, doing it in different places in the winter and the spring and this, and like there's just quite a few things that you can say, well, that's not how you do study. But the biggest problem with this study is that it had to evaluate the two different type of training on effectiveness and welfare, because you cannot just have welfare without effectiveness.
Correct.
And the study is based on predation, that innate predatory motor pattern, like chasing sheep or chasing whatever livestock. Well, what they were doing is just so silly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is straight from the study. I've tried to talk to Daniel Mills a few times. I actually talked to him a couple of times through email until he realized that I'm going to challenge his ideas, and that was the end of it. But
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of people, and I have even a little video, and I have a bunch of pictures. You cannot make a study on predation when the ships are in 5x10 or whatever they cannot even walk there. Forget about running, forget about triggering that system.
Right.
And the dogs are on 1.5 meters leash. Who cares if they're with electric collar or you're giving treats or whatever you're doing? You're basically not doing at all what you said that you're going to do in your study, which is compare the effectiveness and welfare on, can you control predation? That means the dog has to get in that mode. It has to go after a sheep, and then you should demonstrate that you can control it, and then we judge on top of that what it takes, and is it welfare dog friendly, right? And the argument that I would get is that, well, in UK there is a law that we cannot just let the dog go. But then don't make the study. Then you clearly cannot make that study. And especially when this study is cited and referenced, and it has become the gospel of studies based on never demonstrating, neither side never demonstrated that a dog running after a sheep, that it's also running, that you can get it back to you. So what is this, how can we pass a legislation and say that force-free works based on China study? It blows my mind.
It's a classic. It's a classic like echo chamber situation, but people like keep saying the study and they read the abstract and maybe the title, right? And it kind of fluctuates in the internet, and now everyone is using it and everyone is citing it, and everyone feels like now this is the gold standard for proving anything. And it's not even like these, I mentioned that before too, like these studies, they have become very clickbaity, because there's nothing in that study that explores the welfare, the way we should think about welfare. A dog owner survey does not count as proof for anything, or evidence for anything. It's really not welfare of the dogs. And yet it says so in the title, and this is not the only study. And then on top of that, the setup is very, very, and like, I fully acknowledge setting up, especially like some sort of case control study that was trying to be that here, and that at least like the way they put it, the Cooper study, like the second version basically. And it's very hard to do that with dogs and trainers. Like, I totally acknowledge that it's very hard to set that up and account for all the factors, confounding factors that could influence the outcome. But that doesn't mean that we just then take whatever we see in that study for like the efficiency of something. And it doesn't mean that we can not talk about it. We still have to mention that the way the dogs were selected, and everyone, especially the forceful community, we are all about the different personalities of the dogs and their personality tests for the dogs. And like, I had one. And then here, out of the sudden, we ignore that, and we are okay with that not being acknowledged because the sample size is so low, so the confounding factors are very significant here. And then on top of that, you don't even like even close to exploring or analyzing what you set out to do or what it is being used now. And then on top of that, to make their way out, now we also just picking within the study words that the authors used.
Yes.
Discussion, not even the data itself, because the data doesn't support either of that, like none of it. So this is like such a big shit show, really, like what this study has come to represent, that like it's a mess. It's a big mess. And you know, the study by itself, I think there are some things that you can learn from it. It's not like it's totally useless. It's just not what it's being used for.
It's not what it's being used for, correct.
And the value or the weight of what is being used for is not even close to that.
Yes,
anything,
it's a very serious statement to ban the use of electric collars across the world, because we found out in that study that it's not welfare friendly. That's an incredible leap in faith, and And they cannot not know it. He's a freaking professor in a university that is teaching. Like, I've listened to lectures of his. I mean, he has some interesting stuff that he teaches. But then going this hardcore just based on ideology and not what you're seeing and what you're finding, or at least acknowledge that, I don't know, like, they should have not have that study period, because if the
Yeah.
country doesn't allow to test for predation, then end of story. Maybe theorize, put your theory in paper, but it comes as, go explain to Ginny that the study is nonsense. You have no chance.
Right. Yeah. Because there are because it's never being even the discussion itself or the way the words flow in the results section, somehow we also completely ignore that the reward-based group by the e-collar trainers, that these dogs were seemingly stressed too, even though they weren't trained
Yes.
e-collar. How do we ignore that? How is it possible to ignore that and not
even
ignore?
when you look at the margins, I mean, I'm sure you have, I mean, we're not talking like some disastrous outcome over here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what bugs me is kind of like at some point I stopped reading all of them. I'm sure you did, but I stopped reading all of these dog training studies because it feels like they're all the same in trying to prove something that the study doesn't show.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all the same in terms of what you can possibly take from it. And how many more studies do we need to show, yes, there could be stress, but really it's about the controllability and the understanding of the dog. This is what these studies tell me, and the dogs don't have a good understanding, or we don't even know how exactly the protocol looked like because they don't spell out exactly how the training happened. And that's to me kind of one of the big principles in scientific research achieving to consent is you have to set up studies that are reproducible, not just by your own lab, but by other people too, so we can understand multiple factors that lead to some outcome. None of these
Right.
studies are actually reproducible because the selection of the dogs is off. You can't reproduce this. You don't even know certain confounding factors, some random ass trainers that just happen to be around. And none of those is reproducible. Everyone produces its own unique kind of study that hangs in in the vacuum, and they don't collectively add up to something, but they're all used to make it sound like thousands of studies, hundreds of studies show. No, you have a pile of something. No matter how much it is, it stays still kind of like a pile of something,
Right.
not valuable. So yeah.
I just remember another point on that Daniel Mills Cooper study with the, because they supposedly got the trainers from the electric color companies or whatever, but just as there were laws that they had to follow, at least that's the story, which I can believe it, as far as the not allowing dogs to just run free and chase sheep, because maybe some sheep gonna get tagged and things will go bad. But then again, don't do the study. The other part was, again, there were some limitations, and I think the the electric color people, they had to use low level. It wasn't a choice by the trainer. They had to use low level. And I mean, we know that, the level is not dictated by the trainer, but the motivation at the moment of the dog. So that's another big problem that we're having. And I mean, Schindler and Van der Borg, the very first one was just insane, and it's so hard to read. I've spent so much time on this one. But it should stop right where we talk about the groups were not randomly assigned. pre-selected of being harshly trained versus others. It's like, well, hold on, like where are we going with this? Like how? I'll show you something with the, I promised you I'll show you this one. I think I promised you this when we were at the ICP conference when we were having lunch, the Clive study. I'll show you this. But so the critics of the study, you know, like there were some reviews and stuff, and the biggest one was well, there were few, but the one was like the stress, like the behaviors, the lip licking, ear sets, low tail, all this stuff wasn't really measured or wasn't explicitly analyzed in the study. And then and then there was the other one about the two dogs that they had to be pulled off from the study because the number of shock exceeded the limits of the study. So I mean, you understand how this has to get approved, and this is very, you know, normal. There are limitations, just as Mills had the limitation. However, if he had this kind of limitation, again, he should have not pretended he's doing that kind of study. So there were a couple of dogs that basically, they weren't, just because there were more shocks, that didn't mean that they were tortured. They were just very committed to continue. They were eventually, we were successful. However, we passed the limit by 1 or 2 tops. And you know, that's how it stops. And that's understandable. But it's not, by any means, it's not some kind of a failure. It's just a matter of level of motivation and commitment and what it takes. You know, sometimes, you know, you can, you know, you can tell a kid, hey, don't do that. And the kid's like, okay, I didn't even want to do it anyway. And depending what is at stakes, the consequences have to reach and meet that level of motivation in order to be successful. It's just, I don't think this is hard to understand. But imagine if what typically a real dog training would be, after you stop the dog, you will actually offer him something else to do. You're not going to just leave him out in the open to wander. But even when you leave them out in the open, you can see how there is really no need for body language analysis, right? They're just bored to death. And they're the kind of dogs that they're, you know, highly sensation seeking, as we were talking, because we selected these dogs. Like, we had about 60 dogs, and we selected only the dogs that just never quit chasing. I mean, this is a metal dish, you know, who plays with a metal dish? But you do when you have nothing else to do. At this point, I am just on my phone, like I'm just texting friends, because there is just really nothing to do. Now, let's not forget that they yelped when they got shocked the first day, right? And let's even not talk about the force-free group, because I have a very good argument why it don't work. But let's say they did a very shitty job in their protocol, which is not true. Let's not compare that. This clearly is highly effective, and there is no blowbacks. And that's all they did every single day for the rest of the study. We're just bored. Like, we just like, okay, this is just really... And then you see which you will see some of them, the force-free groups, you know, they just never stop chasing and barking and whining and just highly frustrated that this is just... Imagine if you just engage them right now in anything, playing ball or doing sits and downs, whatever you want. They will be eager to go. There were 3 groups, 1 shock and 2 positive. The one was heavily, the idea was desensitization, and basically exposing gradually and eventually speeding up, and you know, and of course conditioning the word banana with throwing food and stuff like that. Now, however, this is whatever day in the study, but before that, we had to test them twice to make sure that they are really, really insanely goal-oriented and they're chasing. They're not just they're like, they want that lure. So she takes her treat, but she's like, but that thing is there. The thing is not even there, it's not there, it's not moving, there is nothing. We're starting like from nothing, right? There is, she wants to go, but there is nothing to go to, because it's a very initial stage of the desensitization protocol. And the treats are not, you don't choose, like whatever the owner brings. And if we feel that they're coming up with some lame stuff, we have a lot of cool things to offer. I mean, they definitely like the food. This is the very first time the lure started to really move. That's day 4 or whatever day that was. But now the lure picked up the speed that triggered the instinct. And on top of that, there was a little bit of deprivation. They you know, this is early in the morning because it's Florida. You can see we're kind of trying to do it early in the morning because these dogs did not want to stop chasing, and you know. And again, nothing is moving there. This is later in whatever day, this is later. There is no return. There is just absolutely no chance. Of course, think about what their cortisol would show, right? And some of them were, of course, loud. They're whining, they're barking, because they're in drive. They're like having the best time of their life right now. What was interesting is, you know, all the dogs were doing the same thing. You know, the one part of the study was, not the study, but the final test. The first test was when the owner and the trainer are present, so you can try to make a recall if you need to. But then the very second test is when the owner and the trainer are actually outside the field, in about 20 feet or so, facing the wrong direction, and there is no input. So at least we can agree that no matter what protocol you're using, you cannot prepare through R+, the dog, not to go after the lure at this point.
Right.
When you leave it to its own instincts, it's just not gonna happen. It was a 100% success rate. I mean, more than highly effective. And these are the welfare concerns. And I have all the dogs. I mean, I have filmed the whole study. I just cannot, you know, I mean, maybe I can because, you know, I didn't film it hiding or anything. It was, you know, part of the agreement that we were doing. But it is very confusing when somebody says, I have a better protocol. This was done incorrectly. And it's like, okay, well, you can have a toy. The interesting part is we had a dog. It was actually that German Shepherd that was playing with the sticks. And the guy was a little bit concerned later on. He was like, well, is he gonna ever chase anything? And we can tell him to chase again, and he will chase that thing too, if you want. So we play with that for a moment, and of course he's like, okay, if you give me green light, of course I go and chase. And then he was like, I can stop him with the ball. I always stop him. He's crazy about his ball. So we filmed that, and that was, you know, totally on a side part, not part of anything, but it was just, you know, one typical argument that people will say, well, the food was not high reward. No, it was. They were, I mean, there were steaks, there were rotisserie, I mean, there was stuff there that you know they like. They just cannot unsnap from what they wanted to do. And it's the same with a toy. It will be the same with once that mechanism is locked, pretty much you cannot unsnap. You cannot say, well, I have the same thing right here. Why don't you take that? It doesn't even work that way because the system is already locked. This is it. There is no other option. I have no other choices. I don't think of other choices. What do you think? I mean, it was crazy to see, no?
It was very interesting to see. Yeah, I remember I asked you the first time we were on the back then on my podcast how the dogs behaved. And I remember you saying, well, one of them picked up a stick, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But seeing that is kind of very interesting. It's very interesting because it taps into the whole concept of avoidance and how it does not mean fear, right?
Right.
Everyone is so worried about that we're using fear and pain. And they're two different things. And I don't even think it's necessarily fear, but it's a whole different story. And seeing how they kind of I mean, isn't it cool with dogs? It's kind of like there is this whole thing that's in my mind is like you can tell a dog what to do with reinforcement, but their learning is just not complete until the dog can fully contextualize it,
Yeah.
which then means what not to do. And what not to do doesn't mean you're traumatized because no, you're worried about doing it. And such a strong, like predation is such a big behavior for dogs that may not be always the most dominant problem for pet dogs because most pet dogs probably not going to run off leash. But if they do, one of the riskiest ones, right, or one of the most dangerous ones, running in front of the car, or like attacking some dog, the white fluffy dog, that's definitely going to get killed then.
And that's another one, like because of my background with, working in San Rafael for like, I don't know, it was 5-6 years as a guide dog instructor. But it was back in the 90s where we actually were able to use aversives. And one, probably the most important part of the training was to teach the dog to avoid cars. But like in actual context that cars you don't want to mess with.
Right.
Now, once they flipped the script and it's all force-free, I don't know how force-free it is. Mm-hmm. Because when I was working there, we still had the public relations, we still had to sell the program, and we still had to explain how we do things, and it wasn't quite what we were doing. So from firsthand experience, I'm still very reluctant to believe that what they're talking because everybody wants to hear it, that's actually what is happening. Maybe that would be something for you or somebody to go on a tour and see how they train, because you can always, even if they don't show you, you can always see if that can last in the long run. One thing that we were able to train at the time was like you can drop me anywhere, like it can be in San Rafael or it can be in Chinatown or Fisherman's Wharf. I mean, just drop me from the bus with my dog blindfolded, and I will find my way out. And I will absolutely function just like a normal person because of how highly trained the dogs were. Today, they are not trained that way. They are not, this is really not possible. They're basically training one or two routes that the dog kind of memorizes. It's like, okay, from here to the grocery store or to the bank, or, you know, it's a very pattern kind of training. It's not a let's go and generalize that there are curbs and there are carbs and cars and there are trees that hang low and so on. What we had to do is we had to teach the dogs to respect car. So they had to make a contact with the car in a very controlled setting, to where I'm telling the dog go, and another instructor comes with the car and basically kind of blocks and pushes a little bit the dog to where the dog is like, okay, this is, I have to respect that car. We're not talking chasing the dog with a car. That, let me make this clear. But there is a definitely an aversive experience.
Yeah.
So that is extremely valuable, because when you're blind, you have to say go, and the dog will go. Unless there are cars coming, then he's like, I'm not messing with the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the modern style of training is basically, we're not saying go if we know that there are cars. It sounds very logical, but the dog never really learns, the dog never ever really learns that cars are something you don't want to run into from their own experience. They're like, okay, I will, you know, tell you to wait, and I will reward you for waiting, and then I tell you to go. Blind people typically rely on, like, if you have a blind person that also have a little bit more than average hearing loss, they will never have a guide dog, because they have to, like, they have to have a pretty decent sense of orientation and hearing to know where to go. But even then, we took the chance to say, hey, I may not hear the car, and I can tell you to go, and if there is a car, you know better not to go. Now, especially having the, you know, Teslas and all these electric cars, the person cannot hear the car. They can very likely say go, and the dog will absolutely go 100%, because why would they not? They have never put two and two together.
Right.
And that's you know, that's a big downfall on force-free, because it doesn't, a lot of times it doesn't, it kind of makes the curve and avoids the issue. However, the dog never understands that this is just a bad idea in case I have to deal with it. In case I'm faced with it, I would never have a clue that this is a bad thing. So we're just hoping that they will deflect and follow something else. And another one was with the Clive study. I know if somebody sees this, they would still say, I know that they would still say, well, yeah, they look happy, but who knows what's happening? They should be cortisol tests, and they should be, you know, they're for sure deep inside they're traumatized, and it will show. We need science to tell us that. It's like, no, you're looking in a dog that wants to play, that's bored to death. You don't need the test. You don't need the science. If we're going that far that we need science in this, it's becoming very problematic.
That's exactly one of those things, right? Like, where they kind of come up with things like whenever you say, well, there are so many dogs that, like, you say, I can show you my dog, and you tell me, does the dog look traumatized?
Right.
And if you say, well, you can't always see it, and the trauma sits deep, and then read the book, the body keeps the score, and I'm like, like here we go again. It's like all the studies that where it's okay to read the body language and say they look stressed, that's what you're going to use to make the claim that the welfare is compromised. But when you see a dog that doesn't look stressed, then we say we can't rely on body language. So that by itself is already ridiculous. But
Right.
like you said, if we can't even use what we see with our eyes that is rooted not just seeing a dog for the very first time, but in the experience of like, I know this dog, or the experience of like, I know a playful dog, if we can't use that as valuable or acceptable data, like then what's the point of any of this? Like where are
Right.
we going with that?
Right.
That makes no sense.
There was a, the one pessimistic, optimistic dog study. I'm actually doing, hopefully, I'm having her on a podcast, Ana Catarina Vieira de Castro. I know it's a lot of names. She's from Portugal, and she's actually a dog trainer, and is a pretty good dog trainer. I've never talked to her, so I'm really, really looking forward to talk to her. She knows exactly my position, and she's probably the only, not probably, she's without a doubt, the only canine scientist that was willing to come and talk about dogs with me. And that's going to happen Wednesday, and hopefully it happens. Hopefully, it happens. But the pessimistic, optimistic test, I mean, so there is the, for anybody that doesn't know, I'm kind of going to butcher it just for the sake of, not going through the whole thing, because we're going to have a whole podcast on this, but 6 different training schools in Portugal in one town, and they divide them on aversives and force-free. And the aversives basically lump anything from yelling and pinching to leash to electric, just like a chaos, pretty much. But forget about that. There is the actual test is their food dishes in a certain distance, I believe it's 20 meters or whatever. One is full, one is empty, and then there is some rotation. And then they measure the time, how long it takes for the dog, when you say go, to go to the dish. The dogs that were in the aversive group showed like from 0.5 to a second slower than the other group. And therefore, we came up with the conclusion that they're pessimistic. And that whole pessimistic, optimistic, that comes from humans. I mean, that was an actual real thing, but it's a very different, totally different thing. And I give her credit for the creativity and trying to do it like this. However, going by 0.5 or 1 second later to go to the dish and come up with those conclusions that they are pessimistic, and not acknowledge these playful dogs in Clive's study and saying that you actually need a scientific test to dig deep to find out if they're really stressed, because you wouldn't know otherwise. That's kind of the divide we are in.
Yeah.
And her studies are, they're one of the, she's, the other one she has is the carrots and sticks, which is, again, how we were talking earlier. You mentioned the clickbait titles, it's just like, okay, of course. Like, what are you going to do, the red pill or the blue pill? And yeah. I cannot wait to talk to her, simply because she's not just scientist, but she's trainer. She does obedience on a serious level, but she's very familiar also with IGP, because that's how I didn't even think I will be able to ever. I just was talking to a friend of mine in Portugal that's an IGP trainer, and I was like, oh, I just realized that researcher, she's in Portugal, maybe you can talk to her. And he's like, dude, I know her, she's really cool. I'm like, well, can you try? And that's how it happened. So really looking forward to that, because I think it will be much interesting conversation to talk about, kind of like you, but on the other side of things. But who knows if she's on the other side even? I don't know. From the little that we have conversed so far, she seems very logical and reasonable. But it really, you know, it makes a difference when you're doing studies, but you're also going out there and training dogs. And on top of that, I mean, I know I'm giving all this away as my strategies, but our podcast not gonna come out before Wednesday, so I will, you know, I will have the chance to talk to her. But she's also, from what I know, very into climbing herself. So,
Interesting.
you know, there is challenges, there is adversity, there is, you know, there is a reason why you are back on the wall after you fell down and you're bleeding, and, you know. So
Yeah.
it can be interesting. But it's sometimes the studies, like we just put so much emphasis on the studies of 6 dogs or 20 dogs, or just in this one part of one country in one town, what they're doing, and we take it as we just put it across the board. So that's what everybody else is doing, therefore it's not good.
Right. Right. That's a problem. The whole, like, so many words in the dog training world: science-based dog training, relationship-based dog training, enrichment. All of these things have been diluted, that they became meaningless, because it's almost like we lost the ability to dig deeper and like a real scientist question, like, could the opposite be true too, and why? And then the whole ChatGPT thing, and like, it's, if you have read enough comments that are very long, you know which ones are ChatGPT and which ones are not, and like makes everyone so superficially throw words around that, you know, like, I can tell that, like, if you not to say that I'm the expert in this, right? But I'm reading so much about that stuff that a lot of things kind of fall together and make more sense as you read more on the neurobiology and neuroscience of something. But then people throw out words like the amygdala and the periaqueductal brain, and I'm pretty
Yes.
sure that none of them are actually really understand what they're talking about. Because if you did, you probably wouldn't say it that way, to make such a strong point about something. Because if we know one thing, then nothing is just straightforward in the brain ever. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And yes, the nuances in here and there, they're like, they give you data, but it's not that you're like, oh yeah, the limbic system lit up, and that means we are in a fearful state or something, right? That's just not true. And that's the conversations that we currently have on social media. And you could say, oh, well, I don't care about social media, but unfortunately we do have to care about social media. It's not
Yes.
anymore you just ignore it, because social media and what is being taught there is used to write policies and
Oh,
to
even the AIs are using it. I mean,
right.
you
Yeah.
ask a question and all of a sudden you have, you know, all the comments or articles from hardcore force-free trainers as this is why. And I
Yeah.
can give you 20 of those and they're very legit. And I'm like, no, they're not.
Yeah. Yes. And that's dangerous. I read a quote yesterday somewhere, or not a quote, but someone heard someone say, in 3 years or so, the internet will be completely useless because of the amount of
Yes.
misinformation taking over.
Yeah, I did too. I think this can very likely happen. I think this
Yeah.
can very, very likely happen. But for right now, at least, I mean, I'm sure this is just happens to everybody. I don't think ChatGPT praises me and blows smoke up my ass only. It's very, it's so dangerous because, you know, and even when you say stop this, and it's like, okay, I stop. They don't want to stop. They don't even know how to stop or whatever, but they're trying, doing everything they can to please you. I mean, everything they can. And when you have somebody that doesn't have the knowledge and asks the question that kind of prompts the answer that they're looking for, and ChatGPT gives them that answer, now they feel extremely powerful because even the AI agrees with me.
Right.
And how do you argue on that one now?
Right. And then the AI phrases it in a way that sounds super intelligent and super convincing and powerful. And it's like, yep, that makes total like confirmation bias 101, right? And then copy paste into Facebook or social media, anywhere. And there we go, right? And then others are like applauding that. And it's like, yep, so true. And it happens on both sides, right? It's not like
100%.
so like we're deviating from having like truthful conversations. And I'm like now even appreciating people that say like, you know, I train the way I train, not because science says so, just because that's the way I train. I'm like, good for you, you know, like this is like honest and then the way it works for you. And that's not, you don't need to pull in science to try to validate anything, right? Sometimes the experience is what you do.
Experience is, there is just nothing substitutes experience. But maybe the ChatGPT and all of them, do you think one day they will actually just kind of stomp their key, like something just comes on your keyboard and says, no, that's what it is, and that's what we know so far. Maybe in the future, maybe whatever, but for right now, that's really what, and really give the answers regardless of you liking it or not. Do you think that's gonna happen soon, or is it ever gonna happen?
I don't know, because I mean, there's always been this confirmation bias in everything we do. Like everything is kind of driven by, some of us try to be as objective as possible, but like there's always going to be a little level of, well, it's also like I can't help it but think that way. So I think AI would have to become like so independent of certain inputs that it can kind of make that judgment. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that was impossible.
But then would the AI even have the interest to do that? Because, you know, it's like, no, I keep my humans and here is a little for you. It's like, oh, you want to hear? Yeah, exactly. Sure, you're right, you're brilliant, you're genius. Oh, you too. Right. I mean, you got it wrong, but very good thinking, and you're still right. Like, Jesus Christ, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know where this is going, but it's right now, it's like at really like, it's at the point where I get really frustrated with that, like the ChatGPT or the AI responses. And it's not to say not to use it, right? I mean, like everyone says that, just use it the right way. I'm using it to correct my grammar. But you cannot fact check. You cannot fact check with AI, or you cannot have ChatGPT necessarily give you facts and not fact check yourself or have critical thinking lost, because that will get you into like, I tried it and I got so frustrated. It's like, no, you're first free, but we are like on the other side. Like, you got to take that from a different approach. And it comes back from like twisting my words just to say something that just wasn't true. I'm like, huh, this is interesting. Like, if you don't have the ability to question that critically, you take it for what it is. And the pet owners, they're influenced so massively by this narrative.
Right. And the very first thing they're gonna it's gonna come out on their screen.
Yeah.
Clearly, we know what's gonna come out on their screen.
Yeah.
It's a hard one because I mean, we all use it and we all trying to learn about other stuff that we don't know about. So AI is just beautiful platform, but then, man, I get this fear. Like when I am familiar with the subject, the topic I'm discussing with AI, I can okay, you're just going off just here, and I can correct certain things. But if I'm trying to learn about something that I have no idea, and I get whatever it comes on the string,
Yeah. You believe it.
as much as I want to believe it, I'm actually starting to be very reluctant, simply because I know how it functions in the subjects that I'm very comfortable with.
Yeah.
It's a,
Yeah.
but it's a great tool. I mean, it's in a lot of ways, it you know, just has to be used with caution, and maybe one day, who knows? But then if it gets that good, which it will, then it's like, you humans just, I'll
Then we're lost.
entertain you for a little longer, and then we just don't need you no more, maybe.
Right.
Who knows,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So what are you having? What's coming? What are you doing in your world? Anything interesting?
I'm going to Australia in February, so I'm excited about
Cool.
that for a seminar in Melbourne and Sydney, and some other seminars here and there. And funny enough, I will double down on certain content that I'm doing, especially also on YouTube. I
Cool.
think more than ever, it's going to be important to not shut up, basically.
Yes. No,
Keep
this
the
is
train.
it is very, very important, and I think all of us are very grateful that you and the few people that are, you know, taking that stand, you know, to just say, well, maybe it's not quite like that, you know, maybe we need to rethink certain things. I think it's a fresh air that's very much needed. What about your you have the online school, or what do you call it? The
Triple helix.
yeah. Tell us about this.
So it runs, I think, similar to your program. So it runs 3 times a year, and I call it triple helix because instead of the double helix, like DNA double helix, it's how neurobiology of behavior, ethology, like the species dog, genetics, and then our handling, how they all intertwine. So instead of just looking from a very, very like operant conditioning behavioral
Skinnerian
perspective
stuff, yeah.
about the trained dog, yeah, everything influences the dog, and understanding the fundamentals there. And we look a little bit into the anatomy, neuroanatomy, the brain and stuff, and some areas that I like people to at least have a little bit of an understanding of when they hear amygdala. It's not about fear. It's some like it is fear involved, but it's not just about fear, right? To get a little bit of a way to talk about this in a little bit better way. And then we'll address aggression and fear and anxiety, in particular anxiety, because it's something in relation to resilience and stress is something that I'm really passionate about addressing in general. And we go through like some case studies and mainly the science behind it. And then in the last module, we'll also debunk the dog training papers a little bit and give some language around this in a better way. So it's been pretty fun. It ran 3 times so far. And I think the feedback I get a lot is kind of like, for those who are already like balanced trainers, they now have a better way of talking about things. They don't feel like they don't feel like pushed into the defensive as much as they're now a little bit more offensive in their way they think about it and communicate it. And then there's some that are maybe against the tools per se, but not about the concept of boundaries and rules, and they tip their toes into that field of training and stuff. So, and especially in other countries, so pretty much almost all, no, not all continents, I don't know, 4 continents, and I don't know how many countries, because it's
Cool.
online, so that
Yes,
helps, right?
exactly.
You can actually scale
Yeah.
and provide that kind of education. So the curiosity and ambition to learn that stuff. And it's like, it's not kindergarten stuff. Like, I
Right.
was not holding back. This is like graduate level, PhD level at some point, and they can go back to it whenever, but like I'll challenge
But you
them.
kind of reiterate it for them in a
Right.
way that they can grasp the concepts, right? And that's
Right.
what it takes, because like
Right.
again, I don't have the PhD. Like even now I don't consider myself like by no means an expert of understanding how to read a study, but it took me a long time to really get a grasp of I mean, I started just like everybody else. You read the abstract and the conclusion and you think you got it, and it's like, no. Like, it's the last thing you need to do, actually.
That's really the last thing you need to do. That's true. That's true.
How are you doing on time? Like, the reason I'm asking is because when I got convinced to do my school, I was gonna write. I basically had 2 books ready to be published, and then somebody that was had the model of this kind of schools and stuff in a different areas, nothing to do with dog training, and they were like, no, we, I can really help you do this, and you're gonna have free time. I mean, imagine how much free time you're gonna have. And that was so, I bit the bait. There is no free time. I don't complain. Because, like every day there is something that happens or I think of that I'm like, I need to sit, and this is going into the course. There is no question this is going into the course. But the fairy tale of having free time, more free time, it just didn't work. So I don't know what your goal is, but that may not be.
Yeah, so like the concept of free time, I kind of said bye to that like a long time ago. And I just wrote an email about this actually yesterday, because I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes I'm like, what did I do before I had my business and dogs? Like, I must have had so much free time. What was I doing? And I don't remember being bored back then. I'm pretty sure I was still living in New York City. I was doing all kinds of things. So I was busy regardless. So the busyness never changes, right? And if you kind of
Right.
go for doing something in order to have more free time, this will be filled up in like no time. What I do though, because I do care a lot about the education of science and understanding fundamentals of that, I do have I have theme days, and it doesn't always work, but I do have theme days where I put like one week a day, block everything, and all I do is like read things that it's piling up on my desk, and like all these things and the books I buy and the papers I print out, and I never get to it because when I have a little bit of time, then it's not enough to really dig in, or I'm too tired to think that way. So I have to have theme days where I don't do anything but this. And this has helped. This has helped a lot to kind of push basically my own urge of like learning more about things forward. Otherwise,
Yeah.
things would get, because there's always something else that is more urgent than reading, unfortunately.
I know you do running. Do you get, how do you stop your thoughts when you're running? The reason, I'll tell you, this is the craziest thing, and I wish that I was in the running. I used to run, but I I would rather swim. So I go, I mean, I don't go, I have a swimming pool in my house. So I swim like regularly and like really, really swim. However, the moment I start swimming, ping, and there is this brilliant idea. And now I have set the timer. Now I have the discipline to actually do what I'm supposed to do, and that is I need to swim and I need to make a certain time and so on. So I start repeating the thought over and over as I'm swimming. I'm like, I cannot forget it, I cannot forget this, I cannot forget this. And eventually, of course, the way our brain works, you forget it. And every once in a while, I get so mad at myself, but I come out of the pool and I quickly type something and they go back. But then I consider it really like cheating, like just not being. So how do you do with the running? Like what happens?
I mean, it's hilarious because it's like exactly the same. It's like exactly the same. Like, because there's not a real distraction other than like running. Like I keep thinking about things and then it just comes one after the other.
And they're
then,
good
like,
ones, right? That's where the
good
best thoughts
ones.
go.
Always the best ones that
Yes.
you like try to figure out for so long. And just like you, as soon as the run stops, I'm like pulling out my phone. I should probably focus on like hydrating or whatnot and pulling out my phone and jotting down what I'm thinking about. I think you have to be in pain enough to forget thinking or like to not think. And I haven't really reached like in my really long runs at some point. Yes, I will not think anymore because I'm like in pain or whatever. But the early stages, I'm like, no, there's
At least when you're running, you have the scenery. You have like, you know, when you're swimming, you're just listening to your breath, and there is nothing really happening. It's you in your brain, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's. I don't know. There's nothing I can do about it. Like I know people say like when you run, you stop thinking about things, and that does happen every now and then, but most of the time it doesn't because it's like my brain is like, woohoo! Now we are down to business. Like finally, you're not doing anything else, right?
And that's kind of what you know, like I guess some of the people that I follow on social media and whatnot, you know, they always say like your best ideas, best thoughts, they always come in your days off, in your vacation, you need to kind of, you know, somehow flip the switch and then you become more productive. But it's a challenging one.
Yes, it's true.
So how old is your dog? When I mean, of course you're gonna go through titles and stuff, right? I mean,
yes, that's the plan. So
of
he's
course.
9 months, a little over 9 months now.
Okay.
Starting to be in his teenager phase where he has a lot more to say about things and opinions. But yeah, training is going well. Like again, it's still in the baby shoes and stuff and learning about that. Michael keeps telling me like we're gonna start the object guard soon, and it's like, oh, like yeah, I don't really know yet what that means, but I will find out very soon, I suppose. And
It's very cool.
Yeah, it's going
I mean, we're
along.
gonna be seeing each other because again, I mean, I'm a little bit ahead of you, but my wife, her dog is maybe what 3-4 months older than yours, just about kind of on the same level, I would say. So it's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
Me and Michael always talk to get together, and it hasn't happened since a very long time. But every time we've trained together, it's been so cool.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe we will be coming your way, or we organize something here. That would be. Either way, we're gonna, you know, stick to the sport, and it's gonna be cool to see each other actually, not talking about science and R+, you know, just have fun with the dogs, because that's really what's about.
Right.
And very cool. Melanie, thank you. I think this was, hopefully people liked it. I don't know. I have to kind of think if I pause the videos or I don't, because it's gonna create create a storm for sure.
Yeah.
And you know what is the sad part of this is that no matter what you see, when you have the conviction to disprove it, you will disprove it.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, how do we talk to each other?
Right. Yeah. That's very unfortunate, because then it's like that then the goal is not anymore to actually find the solution. There's no, like, we kind of come together a solution. It's really just you want to be right. That's
Yeah.
the only goal you have. And it's a very powerful emotion, wanting to be right.
Well, I think this was fun.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
fun. That
Thank you
was a
for
lot of
having
fun.
me. It was a
Hopefully
good conversation.
people like it, and I'm sure we're going to be talking more about other things. Maybe we just talk sometime just pure training and forget anything else and just have fun about training, you know? Because
Yeah, that would be cool
I think
too.
people like to hear just about training, and that's it gets, that conversation is so saturated and it doesn't go anywhere, kind of stalled, that it's like becoming, but somehow people still like to listen to it. So we keep
Yeah.
talking, we still keep talking, and we still, you know, provide the arguments that we have, and maybe one day there will be people that are willing to sit down and have like a panel of discussion, and maybe two, and we just talk about this stuff. Wishful thinking, I know that's not happening, but it would be great.
I think, you know, how like in the bigger scheme of things, you know, there's this pendulum that swings to one extreme, and now it's swung to the other extreme, which is the whole force-free movement. There will be a change. Like, this is just history. There will be a change back into either the middle or the other extreme. Just like with politics, right? It's like always the same. So this movement will, just like everything else, will have some sort of downfall, if you will. So, and I think the seed has been planted. I mean, I obviously am exposed to a lot of things that kind of agree with what I say, but I do think that there's a seed planted in a lot of people's mind.
Yeah,
that a lot
I
of
agree
people-
with you on this. I definitely agree with you. I think because of few people, the argument that we have becomes more articulated and you know, hard to twist it. Not that it's
Yeah.
not possible to twist it, but it's much harder to twist it. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. Well, thank you again, and
Thanks for having
I'll
me.
be talking to you, because I can even
Yeah.
give this away, because nobody will know anyway, but you are one of my guest speakers for my annual
Yeah.
event here. So that's going to be super cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice talking. Super
Nice.
conversation.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, and we'll talk soon.
Yes.
Next week.
Yes. Take care.
Bye.